I'd like to move on to our next session, which is John O'Driscoll, our Chief Information Security Officer for the whole of Government of Victoria. Just a little bit of a bio about John. He was appointed to the role in October 2017, and his responsibilities include enhancing cybersecurity capability, resilience and cyber incident response in Victoria. He's also responsible for delivering actions detailed in Victoria's cybersecurity strategy, which was released in August 2017. John has had over 35 years' experience in cybersecurity and IT governance with financial services and the public sector. He was actually previously Senior Manager of Information Technology Risk at ANZ, and before that he held senior security positions at AMP and the Commonwealth Bank of Australia. On his appointment to the role, he was described as having a focus on leading collaboration across Victoria's departments and agencies and helping with ongoing work in those areas to monitor and respond to cybersecurity risks, as well as engaging with the Commonwealth and private sector experts to deliver a resilient and cohesive cybersecurity environment. John was also charged with developing cyber emergency governance arrangements with Emergency Management Victoria, as well as a plan to attract, develop and retain skilled cybersecurity public sector workers. A big and important remit, John. So now I'll hand it over to you.
Fantastic. Look, thanks very much, Roberta, and a big thank you to Andrew and the team for inviting me to come along and join in this session today. So when I started in the role in October 2017, I recognised that I wouldn't be able to drive significant change and uplift in cyber by myself. And so it's really important that I work collaboratively with stakeholders like VAGO, with the Victoria Managed Insurance Authority, with OVIC, the departments and agencies, and also with the audit and risk management community and chairs, as well as my colleagues at a national and in the states and territories. So in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to try and give you a bit of an overview of what the current cyber threat landscape is at a global, national and state level, what the impact of COVID-19 has been on our cyber risk profile, and Andrew mentioned a few points there. I'll elaborate on those. And also, if you're not aware, cyber threats are currently rated as the second highest whole of Victorian government risk. So I'll give you an indication as to why and what we're doing about that. And then some questions that you should or could ask of your CISOs or your cybersecurity leads. So the current cyber threat landscape at a global level, we're having increased likelihood and increasing impact of cyber attacks. What we're finding now is that cyber is not a Netflix series, it's actually a here and now. And cyber crime is more profitable globally than illicit drugs. And so some of the data points on that is that in 2021, the profitability for cybercrime is globally $6 trillion, and that's up from $3 trillion in 2015, so a fairly short period of time. Critical infrastructure is under constant attack by cyber criminals and also nation states, because it can be an opportunity to monetize their activities. It can also be an opportunity to have a first mover impact and actually disable some of that critical infrastructure and cause some panic among the community. At a national level, 1 in 3 Australian adults have been the victim of cybercrime. So if there's 100 on our call today, at least 30 of you have had a cyber crime against you, whether it be a fairly small one from a Visa card or whether it's been a credential theft. Nation states are constantly looking at gaining advantage, either by just understanding what we know and what we have, and also by stealing research. Australia is recognised for some of its capability and thinking in digital, and also we have a very active tertiary education and research area. So it's much quicker and easier to steal research than it is to create your own. And the impact on the Australian economy is about $1 billion annually, and that's just indirect costs. There's a lot of personal cost involved in that as well. And from my colleagues at the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, in the last month, there's been 4,500 cybercrime reports to them, and there have been 150 cyber incidents in the last month 40% of those on critical infrastructure. So in the Asia Pacific area, we are a definite area of interest, and no industry is immune. At a state level, so I established a cyber incident response service in my team in July 2018. We've been capturing data since then. Basically, every 45 seconds, somebody is attempting to access our networks, and every 40 minutes, there's a successful compromise. So that's a little bit like the attempt is like somebody coming up to your home, checking the doors, checking the windows to see if they get in. And then every 40 minutes, so somebody is able to get into our networks. They're not necessarily able to do anything, but it's a little bit like somebody getting into your house. They may get disturbed and get away without you losing anything, or they may actually look for your crown jewels and take them. Cyber criminals target government, industry, small business and the community. And when they target government, there's no distinction between federal, state and local. So as Andrew mentioned, local governments are getting consistently attacked, and that's probably going to increase. There have been over 1,500 incidents reported to my cyber response service in the last 18 months, and over 250 Victorian government entities have been impacted by that. I'm fortunate that I inherited a cybersecurity strategy. So Victoria was the first government to issue a cybersecurity strategy, and we're currently in the process of updating that to be more in line with the national strategy and be able to come up with a new strategy for the state, which will kick in from probably the mid to late this year. As an indication, so when I stood up my cyber incident response service, as I mentioned in July 18, we had about 25 incidents that were reported to us. It's not mandatory reporting. As at the end of last month, we had 99, and you might be able to see from the graph that we've peaked on a few instances as well there. So reports come into us because we can provide some assistance, but you can see the trend is increasing. So that will continue in our estimation. So the impact of COVID-19. Cyber criminals will use any opportunity to exploit fear, uncertainty and distraction for financial gain. So that hasn't changed. To be honest, we expected a fairly major uptick in incidents. We haven't seen that, but we've seen that the lure to get people to click on phishing links or to disclose information has been COVID related. At a national level, there are 5 levels of alert, going from 5 being normal up to level 1, which is a national cyber crisis. In March, due to COVID, we escalated that level to level 4, which requires, in our terms, leaning forward, getting prepared, and there's weekly discussions now with my colleagues from the states and territories and federal government to see whether that needs to be escalated further. Rapid deployment of work from home capability has definitely increased our risk profile. Andrew mentioned that, and in Department of Premier and Cabinet, 95% of our workforce transitioned to work from home within about 2 weeks. If somebody had said that in 2019, it probably would have been a multi-million-dollar project that would have gone over about 18 months, but we're actually able to deliver that within about 2 weeks. So that's great in that it allows our staff to work remotely, but it also means that what used to be our corporate network now has been extended into the home office environments. And then we have a mixture of some people using their own devices and also work-related ones. So the possibility of having your home network compromised is reasonable. And what we're concerned about is when we all return to work, is there a possibility that those devices have been compromised with malware, and when they get plugged back into the corporate network, could that malware transition into our trusted inner sanctum? So we're doing work along that. One of the good things is that I guess there's a strong desire now to maintain extended working relationships, and so which is great for our staff, probably better for our productivity. But with any opportunity comes risk, and we're currently working through what our options are to try and mitigate that risk within an acceptable risk appetite. So cyber threats are the second highest whole of Victorian government risk. So, and why? Because we live in a complex and fast-moving cyber environment, we're pushing more towards digital delivery of services to our citizens. And I guess in the past, Victoria has been a little bit behind some of the other states in that, particularly New South Wales. We're also extending our supply chain so that we have a lot of reliance on third parties. And some people say, oh, is it poor security to have a reliance on cloud? My personal view is you can have better security in the cloud than you've got in your own infrastructure. So again, it's a case of understanding what your risks and threats are and mitigating them appropriately. I think the design and operating effectiveness of our existing controls definitely needs more work. At the moment, I have focused more on response and recovery because we knew that we were starting to get attacked, and I think we have to get better at preventing as much as possible, and then also a much more focused role and capability to detect what's happening in our networks. Some of the industry stats are that bad guys can be in your networks on average for about 6 to 9 months before you even know it. So that's something that we've got to definitely reduce that time to discover. And then a lot of that will be based on technology, but also people and processes. With people, we have limited capacity, and I've said corporate alignment. So basically, there's only about 5 to 6 CISOs across the whole of Victorian government. And Victorian government consists of 311,000 public servants across over 1,800 entities that employ them. So as I do my job better, there will be recognition that there's a need for more CISOs. At the moment, there's security managers, but they can tend to be at a lower level in the organisation structure, and then they struggle to be able to bring about change. So that's something that I would like to get your involvement and assistance in going forward in improving that capability. Our processes, a lot of them have been built on the past. They inhibit rapid and appropriate response. So we're working with the Victorian Government Purchasing Board to see how we can procure cyber services much more quickly and efficiently than we have in the past. And technology. So at the moment, I think there's been a systemic underinvestment in technology across government departments and agencies for quite some time. We identified a risk of legacy infrastructure. So that's basically assets that are old and are currently unsupported. So, you know, there's some infrastructure that supports critical services across government that's old enough to have a driver's license. So that's not good enough going forward. We need to make sure that we have better controls around asset management and we retire them before they become redundant. At the moment, there's about 14,000 Microsoft Server 2003 and 2008 devices across government, which we identified in January 2019. About 6,500 of those have been remediated, and we're pushing hard now, and we're eliciting your support to help drive better management of that risk. Our focus in the past has been the cybersecurity strategy. It was a 3-year time horizon, 23 action items, of which 20 have been complete, which is good. But it's important to understand that cyber threat will not be mitigated by just technology. People and process is essential. And with people, we have to make them aware, but they also have to care about it. So a lot of work going in improving our culture and the way that we communicate to our people. And as I mentioned, work on processes, and we need to move our technology into a state where we get better visibility of risk and are able to take appropriate and informed decisions. So it's important that you have a cyber incident management plan, a little bit like business continuity. So it's not a case of if you have a cyber incident, it's when, or you've had it and you're not aware of it. So it's really important that your entities that you're governing have incident management and business continuity plans, that they exercise them, they improve them, and continually repeat them. So I guess in summary then, what do we need to do? We need to change the corporate culture of cyber. So we need to change it from an IT risk to a business risk. We need to build our cyber processes as part of the risk management framework across government. I don't want to have different processes for mitigating and managing cyber risks than we have for other risks. We need to move from compliance to risk management. I don't want it to be a checklist approach where people say, John, just tell me what I've got to do. I want them to understand what they need to do and the implications of doing that. And we need to move from activity to outcomes. Having lots of things happening is not good. We need to determine what the outcomes are that we need to achieve and actively and aggressively monitor delivery to make sure those outcomes are achieved. And we need to move from a position of thinking that we can solve cyber with a tool to we need people, process and technology. So 3 questions, I guess, that you could ask of your forums and your key stakeholders are, what and where are our crown jewels? So those crown jewels will be data and the IT assets that support them. And that's becoming more difficult because our perimeter is fragmented. So we can have data sitting in third parties, we can outsource responsibility for delivery of a service, but we cannot outsource the accountability for that. Second question, how well are they protected now? And how is their ongoing protection assured? And I think there's a real need for a better approach to the 3 lines of defence, first, second and third line. So obviously Vargo are in the third line role, and my team at the moment sort of oscillates between level 1 and level 2. So I think I need to become more of a second line function. And then the third question is, how resilient are we if and when our confidentiality, integrity or availability is compromised? And that's the importance of having your cyber incident management plans and BCPs, which I believe David's going to talk about coming up. So that is pretty much a quick overview of cybersecurity. I know it's a lot to go through, and my offer is that if you have any questions that you would like to pose to me outside of this event, I'll make sure my contact details are available and feel free to reach out.
Thanks, John. That was fantastic. Look, I listening to you there, that comment about systemic underinvestment in IT infrastructure, I couldn't agree with more. I think we have a tendency in all jurisdictions to invest a lot of money in infrastructure, but it always seems to be physical infrastructure, not information infrastructure, and particularly information security infrastructure. And the other point that I discerned from your talk there is that we can have all the what I call the silicon-based controls in the world, but it's quite often the carbon error that occurs. In other words, human beings who are the weakest link. We have a few questions for you, John, maybe a couple of comments. I know Jeff Harry is particularly keen to understand whether or not you can produce, or do you produce, toolboxes or guides on good controls. We know there's a lot of jurisdictions around the world, like the NIST standards, that talk about this, whether or not you produce those. And the second question as a part of that is, would you be prepared to attend audit and risk committee meetings if invited?
Definitely. And so for the first part, the first question is, we're starting to put that collateral together. When I started, I took the numbers in my team up to 4. And that's across those 311,000 public servants. So now there's 16 in my team, and we're trying to then be able to create artifacts to take stuff out of our heads into good practice and share. And so we have started that process. As far as attending audit and risk committees, yes, I've been invited to some, and I've been happy to go along. There's been some awesome questions that are asked, and my advice is that there's no such thing as a stupid question. I've heard some really stupid answers in my past, but feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be delighted to attend.
Oh, thanks, John. I'm pretty sure I knew that was going to be your response, given your role in terms of collaborating. And then there's a follow-on question from Jeff, and probably you may have answered it in terms of the work that your staff are now starting to do, but he's keen to whether or not there could be some kind of standard report template to the executive leadership teams and audit and risk committees on security performance. Now, I know Dave will be able to answer this for our own organisation, because absolutely we have a monthly report on our security performance, and we, particularly the Office 365 metrics that are available through the deployment of our cloud technology. So again, I guess it's more of a comment, but I think what they're after is help us, please. The more guidance you can give us, the more tools, checklists you can provide to us, the better. I think There's probably one before we then move on to Dave. I've just the last one. It's a question you might be able to answer it given your position, and I think it's a really important point. And other people have made this. You know, we talk about the new normal, and I talk about the better normal. And of course, you know, what this has shown us is that we can respond rapidly. As you said, there was a huge rollout and an uplift in VPN. While that might have created some security risks, no doubt it showed that we can be agile and nimble when we need to be. And the question, of course, is, you know, how are we going to cement that? Are agencies, do you think, leveraging off this digital leap? So, you know, moving away from paper, or do you not have a view of that yet?
Yeah, there's two bits. So some are, and others have an intent. So definitely, and as a government, we need to be able to communicate more effectively with our citizens. You know, they're used to their daily lives being able to operate digitally, but in government, we're still not there yet. So, and I think having some standards, rather than people trying to do it on best case, is really important. So what we're doing now is trying to build up a security architecture practice. We will have patterns for how you deploy services on a consistent basis. And then the security people can be the enablers of that digital success, rather than sometimes being seen as the cops who say, no, you can't do anything.
Indeed, yeah, good observation. Look, there's a few more that have popped up, but we might hold them because for those listening in, we're going to have a general Q&A at the end where the four presenters will come together. And just to reiterate a question that was asked and we've responded, these presentations will be available online after this event. Both the PowerPoint slide packs and the videos themselves will have up on YouTube, I assume, or some other appropriate source. Okay, thanks very much, John. That was very, very useful and insightful.